certain age in the 1990s, you definitely recall the Notorious B.I.G., also known as Biggie Smalls, Biggie, and Christopher Wallace. The late rapper's hit Big Poppa, which features a sample of the song Between the Sheets by the Isley Brothers, was nominated for Best Rap Solo Performance at the 1996 Grammy Awards, and then went on to win a Billboard Music Award. Fast forward to today, and Big Poppa has been released as a house remix by Biggie's son, CJ Wallace. He's joining us this morning along with producers Willie Mack, Sarah Rush, and Jonathan Hay, who has his roots firmly planted right here in Louisville. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for taking the time. And I'd like to kind of start out with Jonathan to set the scene, because Jonathan, when people say Louisville, Kentucky, even though we know big things are emerging from here, but then Notorious B.I.G. Wait, what? So Jonathan, set the scene for us.
So I was in New York working on a project with Eric and Rakim with Sarah, and we were thinking of we were in Brooklyn. We kept seeing like all the graffiti of Biggie. We kept seeing, everything was just saying, being a huge Biggie fan, it just made sense to want to, cover, the Biggie project. So we kind of came up with the idea in New York, and then Sarah flew to Louisville in January, and we started working on the project here in Louisville, and had no idea that we would get CJ and Willie. It wasn't even on our radar. We had no idea that would happen. And what's his AG is Sarah suggested, she was like, "You think we could get Biggie's son?" I was like, "No way." And then, sure enough, do you think we could get Biggie's son on one of the records, on one of the songs? And sure enough, here he is. And they've taken what Sarah and I did. It started in Louisville, and Willie and CJ have just turned it into like a full blown production, and it sounds better than anything that we could ever have thought it to be in the beginning.
Sarah, before we talk with our superstars right there, I mean, you are a superstar in your own right. The fact that you said, let's go big, I mean, no pun intended, thought, I mean, let's reach out and see what happens. I mean, why did you decide that?
I don't know. I always, things just come into my head, and I'll always suggest it. Whether it would actually work out or not, I'm not sure. It was a good idea, and it worked very well. So I'm glad, I'm glad I came out with it.
Now, CJ and Willie, why did you say yes to this?
Well, at that time, we were actually, in early development of, this is pre-COVID, so we were planning on releasing or announcing our second brand, Frank White, around the time of my father's birthday. So we were kind of thinking of,
different ideas.
Yeah, putting the album out or even a single out around his birthday with Jonathan and Sarah once they came to us with the idea. And we were already thinking, what does Frank White sound like? Like, what does this brand sound like? And, it's obviously Biggie inspired, but it's really, everything that I've listened to since I was, 5, 6 years old, all the way up to 23 now. So, and it's a very accurate depiction of kind of what I think who my father is now.
Can you describe or help people understand when it comes to Frank White? What is that? Because some people, even those that I know, I mean, I grew up in the 90s, and we're still grooving to your dad's music. Doesn't matter. But Frank White comes from where?
Right. So, a year ago we had launched Think Big, which was our advocacy platform. And, I've always been into fashion. I've always been into, content. I'm an actor. I've always been just interested in everything entertainment. So, I wanted to build a lifestyle brand where I could, make cannabis products, CBD products, fashion and apparel, and, different collaborations with different brands that, align with us and that we like. And Frank White is one of those names that just kind of always stuck around with me. And my grandma and the estate had never officially had it copywritten or trademarked. So I thought it was a great idea if we could just call the brand Frank White, and here we are today.
Yeah, because the name comes from, for Biggie, it was an alias that we liked it because it was an alias that he had and he used, and super fans know it from the movie The King of New York, King of Hip Hop. But it was also something that was kind of like a John Doe, like you could a way for us to build a new narrative around it and to kind of look at the legacy being reborn through CJ, also do this business and say, okay, how do we talk about collaboration, inclusivity? How do we talk about music and art? And all these things are important to us. And how do we celebrate the impact of Black people and Black culture on music, on art, on design, and the connection between cannabis and that as a way to be creative and express yourself.
Now, when it comes to the remix, I mean, it's blowing up. It's all over the place. I mean, it's just, I mean, it is exploded, but it's different. It is different. And I mean, collectively, what do the four of you hope people get out of it? Because not only are you touching that generation that grew up with that music, but you're reaching a whole other genre, whole other generations, plural.
Right.
Right. Part of it, one of the things when we first heard the album and the concept of the album from Jonathan and Sarah, the idea of how do we celebrate, the history of hip hop and the history of house music were both being created by Black and marginalized people in New York, Chicago, and Detroit around the same time, and then grew to become dominant forces of music and culture. So we have it's a nice throwback, but it's also it's a look back and a look forward at the same time. And it's also cross-generational because I grew up with his dad's music. He grew up after his dad passed away. His music is just part of our culture in so many ways. But then house music, spawned techno and EDM and all the dance music culture and the nightlife culture is a big part of how we all sort of entertain and before COVID go out and have fun. Right. Merging those two and celebrating that, we want people to be able to enjoy it. And you were saying earlier, it's enjoy your dad's music through a different way, and give it more legs in some ways.
Right. And for me, it's I just want to get people to be inspired, be creative. Honestly, this whole project really reminds me of the first time I really heard a mashup of one of my dad's songs, and that was very different and out of the ordinary. And it was a Miley Cyrus "Party in the USA," but it was like a Party in BS remix, mashed up with Miley Cyrus's song. And you can look it up. It's one of the most viewed mixes of his songs ever, and it's hilarious. But it just makes you think of how creative you can be. And nothing against Miley Cyrus or anything like that. I love Miley Cyrus. I grew up on Hannah Montana, so it's one of those things where I just always found that to be really creative.
Absolutely. Sarah, what do you hope people get the most out of this remix?
I have always loved to dance. I've always loved karting, and I've gone to parties all over the world. So for me, this music to be played to the tens of thousands of people who go out and party to EDM, house, techno music, pretty much every day of the year in the world. For as many people who actually hear our song and really with it in that environment.
For sure. And Jonathan, I mean, this, we all know this. This has been an incredibly challenging time in myriad ways, but yet we see something like this happening, which evokes, inspiration. And I love what Willie said about, we're looking back, but we're also looking forward. And so many of us want to look forward right now. What are you hoping, Jonathan, that people get out of this?
I'm just hoping that because I come from more of the hip hop side, so I want the hip hop heads to understand, this. We did want to capture the spirit of Biggie, like Sarah is more on the house side, and I'm on the hip hop side. So she's thinking about the house side, and I'm strictly thinking about Biggie, and I want the fans to know, this is just another different version of Biggie Smalls that, an instrumental form that can be heard in places where raps can't be heard, and it can, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that the hip hop heads, realize that this is done with some real hip hop add hip hop culture, that, I want the fans to make sure that they realize that, this is hip hop for me, so
I think it was also done with some real love, and I think that that's evident. CJ,
absolutely.
of love, when do you feel closest to your dad? When do you feel that presence?
Oh man, every time I'm with my grandma, for sure. Um, she's always telling me how much I remind her of him. And being in Jamaica, I have a lot of family out there as well. My great grandma, who's just turned 98 this year. She lives in Trelawney with a lot of my uncles and aunts and cousins. So anytime I'm there around my family from that side, his spirit is always there. So.
And the last question also for CJ, what do you think Notorious B.I.G., your dad, I know you were very, very young when he passed, but what do you think he would think about this remix?
Man, I think he would love it. I think he'd definitely laugh. He'd find the humor in everything. Just the fact that his music would be able to transcend and go places like this. I'm sure he would be just as surprised as we were when we really first heard the idea from Jonathan. It was me, growing up and going to Coachella, going to certain festivals and being able to experience house and techno music in different fashions. Unlike him, unless he was at a festival or something, before he passed. I'm sure he was able to experience it at some point, but it wasn't what he was used to. And yeah, I feel like if he would have moved to LA and got to experience Coachella, I think he would have loved it. He would have definitely would have appreciated all the love that everybody would be giving to his sound.
Well, I appreciate all of you taking the time, and Jonathan Hayes, way to go to connect that to Louisville as well. Big Poppa House Mix is available on all music streaming sources, and just wait to see what comes next.
Big Poppa.